You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode. Today's episode is sponsored by Centra and Grab, more about them later. Let me set the scene before I introduce you to our wonderful guest today. So we talk a lot about technology and replatforming, platform selection, but we're coming at this from a different angle today because sometimes the platform isn't the problem that the business need to solve. A platform can be fit for purpose, but it just hasn't been implemented or configured correctly to deliver against the operational needs or the business processes that the business wants, or the business's processes have evolved and the platform hasn't caught up technically. And replatform involves a lot of effort and complexity and brings risk to the business, not to mention a big chunk of CapEx cost. Sometimes re-engineering what you've currently got is an actually better solution for the business, whether that's short, mid, or long term. So our guest today is highly experienced, the CTO of a leading development agency called Ecommerce UI. And we're speaking to him recently about a project that he's done for a leading brand, Pangaia, about re-engineering on Shopify. And I thought it'd be very interesting for us to talk about how you approach re-engineering and why sometimes this can be the right approach. So warm welcome to Michal Klim. How are you, Michal?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's a total blast to be here and discuss this project with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. I always enjoy reading what you share on LinkedIn. I recommend anyone to follow Michal. Got a lot of knowledge in the e-com development space. And before we get into the questions, Michal, do you want to give people a bit of a flavour for who you are and what Ecommerce UI is?
Yeah, sure thing. So, as you mentioned, I'm Michal Klim. I'm co-founder and CTO at Ecommerce UI. My main responsibility is to oversight all of our technological efforts. And I guess starting quite recently, I'm trying to become more of this technical public voice of the company. When it comes to Ecommerce UI is award-winning boutique agency. We are a team of 18 based in Poland. We do design and technology, and we work a lot with fashion, beauty, premium brands, mid-market plus size.
Amazing. Thanks very much. So let's get into this because I think this is a really interesting topic because I think a lot of times when people see problems in tech, and if people aren't involved in the decision making around how that platform was initially engineered, how it was configured, how the front end was built, they can think the platform's at fault. But technical and process debt build up is just standard. It happens in most businesses. Can you talk people through how does technical and process debt may often make people think the issue is the platform rather than it's actually about the configuration base? And you talked about thoughtful maintenance, which I think is a really nice way of putting it.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess it always starts with this kind of a very common story for most of the tech projects, like you starting with a clean state, you define your requirements, your tech stack, your timelines, everything goes right. And then you start developing. And when you near the launch, when you near the end, at this point, most likely you already have some tech debt accumulated. It's either because of business reasons, maybe timelines changed, maybe some business requirement changed along the way. The point is that you most likely already have some technical debt there. So then you jump into this retainer mode with some agency, maybe another partner, maybe your internal team, and you go into this maintenance. And maintenance, it's hard. Thoughtful maintenance, it's even harder. So this thoughtful maintenance is when you do maintenance, when you fix things, you introduce new features, bigger and smaller, you optimize existing flows, you introduce new business flows, but at the same time, you fix your current approach, you optimize your current approach, and you consolidate your solutions, taking into account all of the developments in in your e-commerce platform, in all of the third parties that are there, and basically all of the new things. So that's the thoughtful maintenance, and that's the ideal situation. But the reality is that it's rarely happening. And most often developing new features, shipping new things will be prioritized. And that's completely fine. We are all in this e-commerce space, and this is very, very dynamic, very competitive space. So that's totally understandable. But at some point, or eventually, that debt will arise to the point of no return. Not to be too dramatic there.
Greb and create digital flagship stores for iconic brands of today and tomorrow. We are the #1 Sentra agency in the world, with more than 50 Sentra implementations to date. We are also e-commerce design specialists, platform and tech partner agnostic. Try our new e-commerce design subscription. Visit greben.com.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, it's really interesting because you can build up technical debt because at the point in time you made a decision, maybe the platform didn't quite do something how you wanted to. So you've created something custom, or you've bought in a third party, but then the platform roadmap progresses. It makes that customization redundant, and there's efficiency in reverting back to like native functionality rather than having all this custom code built. And so, do you see that a lot when you're working with clients, where actually it's a historical decision might have been right, but actually now 24 months later, that decision can be improved?
Yes, that's a very often scenario, to be honest, and it's not always an easy scenario, either for technical partner or the business, because now you have a decision to make. Like, you've already invested into building something custom. Most likely you invested a lot. This is a custom solution. It may work or may work to some extent. It may have some issues. And now your platform introduced this natively. So you have to try to assess best with your technological partner. You have to assess if it's actually worth investing into jumping to this native solution the platform offers you. Most likely, the maintenance cost in the long run will be lower, but it's not obvious economical choice.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice, because just because it's native doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. I'm going through a few conversations with customers at the moment on going native subscriptions in Shopify versus sticking with a third party. And the native saves you a license fee, and it's simplicity, because obviously features get rolled out and they become available. But there are compromises to make, and the effort of migration is significant and brings risk. So yeah, it's great, isn't it? We all face these nuanced decisions in technology. There's very rarely a perfect decision. But let's put that lens now on we talked about Pangaia as one of the recent projects you've worked on, and it's not, it's common in development where you start working with a company. They've had multiple agency partners before who've made lots of decisions, for a lot of time for very good reasons. But those decisions might not necessarily be what's right now. And your focus is on changing the technology backbone to tackle technical debt. So can you talk us through, how did you approach that? Because that feels quite complex. And what were some of the key issues, causes of that debt that you found? Sentra is the only commerce platform built exclusively for fashion brands. Over 300 fashion brands run on Sentra, including icons like Paul Smith, Jeff, Avenue, and Nudie Jeans. Sentra solves business logic challenges for fashion brands like no other platform, and they are on a mission to help you scale up rapidly, globally, across all online and offline channels. Take your fashion brand global, faster, further, stronger today.
Yeah, so let me start from the end. So whenever you accumulated technical debt and you are past this point of no return, you are already most likely in a place that there's a lot of frustration around the project in basically every department. Developing new features takes longer time, sometimes unreasonably long time, at least from a perspective of non-technical people. there's more bugs, or bugs are more frequent, causing another frustrations for the users, for the business. Operations are frustrated because most likely they have to do like a lot of workarounds even for a simple task, and simple tasks just take longer time. So, and most likely the site is not performing. Like this is rather a combination of different faults or different difficulties in the store. So at this point, there's a lot of frustration around the project, and depends on the case, of course, but having this discussion with the client can be either, like very complex, like they've already paid for some solution, it's already there. There is a lot of, fear that the situation will happen again, so on. So it can be very complex, persuade client that, okay, now we have to do the revamp. Or it can be like very, very easy, like the frustration may be so big that everyone feels that, okay, something bold has to be done in order to change the situation. In that case, I guess our task, or people like us, is to actually assess the situation and understand what actually has to be changed. Like, do we have to change the e-commerce platform? Like, maybe it's actually fit for the task, and we just have to do a revamp of a particular part of the technological solution. So yeah, sometimes it can be hard to persuade clients, okay, we need something bigger in terms of the project, but sometimes you have to persuade a client to actually hold on and stick to the existing solution. So I guess in Shopify there is this kind of a third option that resonates with the business very well, because either there is like this kind of a in-between option. You don't have to revamp your technological stack entirely. You don't have to just maintain and fix of the things. You still can retain your core functionality, your core e-commerce platform, your core third-party integration, and rebuild this kind of storefront, front-end integration layer, however you call it. So the way you actually connect all of those technological, all of those third parties, those integrations, and this part that is actually that the user interacts with. So there's this kind of a in-between middle way that's very much, it's very usually very, very reasonable way to go with.
And I know you said that you started with a clean slate. So rather than, hey, what have we got? Let's try and tweak this. Start from scratch, rethink it through. Can you talk us how did you come up with the solution? What solution? How did you refine the site setup? Because for a lot of people, they will just think, okay, so we just change the theme, versus actually changing maybe like business logic around that as well. So how did you ensure you build back better?
Yeah, so I guess there is a couple of layers there. Like, for one, we have to assess technological stack from an integrations point of view. Like, are those integration actually meet the business expectation? If so, let's retain them. If not, let's try to find another solution. Then there is the code base itself. Like, how what's the technological depth? Like, what are the solutions? What's the actual state of the code base, and in terms of like best engineering practices and so on. Then there is all of the operations, and how operations work basically, and what pain points are there. Like, in Shopify, there is a common story that people actually trying to find a workaround, and non-technical people can do a lot. They can add custom CSS. They can do maybe they can add a different app for one single case they couldn't achieve before. So they installed the app, they achieved it somehow, but this app is ruining the site performance. So the way the operation works also impacts the technology there. So we have to assess all of that and pick and choose what stays and what's not. And when you pass this point of no return when it comes to technological debt, now you have to convince clients that, okay, we have to do the rollout from the ground up, basically.
And how much of this was about the theme itself? Was this about building a custom theme? Was this a mix of theme plus, bespoke custom apps and elements?
Yes. So I guess a lot of difficulties were about the team, about like a lot of complexities, a lot of technological debt was hidden inside the team, and there are a couple of reasons for that. I guess definitely Pangaia is a very dynamic brand, so there's this kind of a priority for ever-changing innovation there. So a lot of features were introduced without cleaning the old ones. So and they were built on top of old solutions. At the same time, the code base went from partner to partner, and every time the code base is changed, the ownership of the code base changed, the technological debt will arise. Like even if the next agency, next partner is approaching the challenge in a thoughtful way, there is no way that they will follow all of the conventions. There is no way that they will be aware about every decisions being made or every convention there is in the project. So they will start doing the things in their own way. That's just natural, and that will also accumulate the technological debt. So we had to deal with that, and there was so much history inside the code base that we just had to redone it from a perspective on a team. But there was also the point I mentioned about the apps. Like the whole app list had to be assessed once again, and we had to pick and choose the best solution that stay. We have to remove some of them. Some of those apps were just installed because at the time Shopify didn't support some cases, and now you could do it natively without an app. So there's no reason to keep it around actually. So another layer of it was the editorial or the operation side of things. So there was a lot of custom solutions, a lot of custom code added inside the theme editor or added inside the online editor, and it accumulated to a state where it was so hard to reason about it, like even for people that actually work with it on a daily basis, but also for us, for technical people, for engineers, it was so hard to reason about it. Nobody knew why it's there and what it's actually doing, what are the consequences of removing it, that it just made sense to start from a clean state. And now knowing what are the expectations, knowing the requirements better and what is used and what's not, we could do much better decisions.
Yeah, I've seen it on a few projects where people have added a lot of complexity into a theme, and not just on Shopify big commerce. Pick your ecom platform that's using a theme versus like a custom front end, and it's to give the content teams the nth degree of flexibility for I think we talked about this before, like, we want to be able to move this tech to any part in the image. We want to be able to change the layout around, and you have like 20 or 30 different permutations of a single layout, and all of those require code in order to make those changes. And then in practice, the content team maybe uses 2 or 3 of them. And what might have been a great aspiration in discovery, if we want the ultimate flexibility, isn't really practical, and the trade-off hasn't been understood. Do you see that quite a bit then? The need to be, or the ability to simplify and say, that, do you really need this level of flexibility?
I honestly think it's crucial. Like, you can simplify the code, you can simplify your technological approach, but the biggest factor that drives the technological depth, that drives the complexity of the project, is this unnecessary complex business logic. Like, as you mentioned, people sometimes may have 5 different header templates, or maybe very complex overlapping merchandising logic that nobody can reason about, or nobody is aware how it's actually what will be showed as a first item in the collection. So I guess this is a very good first step to tackle this kind of a migration, this kind of a technological debt, is to actually assess what's needed to be there, what is actually what we are actually using, and what's actually driving the conversions, driving the sales, and get rid of everything else. And don't get me wrong, it's not always about creating very simple, very minimal solutions. Like, I guess having 5 different header templates, it's fine. But to some extent, we have to be aware that it comes with additional costs. It comes with additional codes. It comes with bigger code bases. Bigger code bases means bigger bugs and more expensive maintenance, basically. So we have to be aware about the costs. And if it's not a business critical thing for you, if it's not a value that, or if it's not something that generates your unique value, it's always good to step back and think if it has to be actually that complex. The thing is that what we found out also, that even if it's created in a good way, like it's working, it's not buggy, it's created properly from an engineering point of view, operations people, or in general, people are not using complex things. If it's something, if you have to read a ton of documentation before you use it, you most likely will try to avoid it as much as possible.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the thing is a feature might sound great, but is it adding the value that it, in terms of the effort that's required to develop and maintain it? Another area that I really want to talk about is automation. And this is a hot area for most e-commerce teams. Like, how can we simplify operations by automating tasks? And how can we use automation tools to solve some of the business challenges? And you do a lot of work in Shopify with Flow, and you've talked about some really cool use cases on LinkedIn. And I know with the Pangaia project, you've got a couple of really good examples of where you've used Flow alongside things like meta objects to help you around like product data, content management. Do you want to talk through a couple of examples of how Flow Builder can help solve some of the business challenges?
Yeah, sure. So I guess Flow and meta objects are underestimated in Shopify world. So for us, there is Shopify before Flow got attention, before meta objects were introduced, and there is Shopify after those. So before Flow and before meta objects, whenever Shopify didn't prepare its solution for your challenge, you were pretty much forced to create a custom solution. And this custom solution will have to live outside of the Shopify. So it could involve, creating a custom server, creating a custom database API, anything like that. In general, like a completely separate technical solution, which have to be also maintained. And creating such solutions drives up the cost, drives up the complexity of the whole project. It requires more maintenance. So when the flow got more attention, when meta objects were introduced, we actually got we as engineers, we got low-level tools to solve those unique challenges. And every brand has some kind of a unique challenge. It can be either on a front-facing side of things, like a unique selling flow, or it could be on an operations level, like you may use enormous spreadsheet of the products that you got from a central team, and you just want to upload this CSV, or maybe automate this spreadsheet to add the products and ease up the operation side of things. So every brand has some sort of unique challenges, and with Flow, with meta objects, we can actually accommodate them without going out from Shopify ecosystem. That drives the whole complexity down, that drives the cost down, and time to the production down. So additionally, Flow can make merchants' lives so much easier in terms of, I've already mentioned importing content, but, automated reporting, synchronizing data between the synchronization. Flow can also make some apps obsolete. Like you can introduce a very simple automated flow that is doing something that you had to install app for. So, and you had to pay for it. So, and now you can do it through Flow. And recently Flow got much more attention. So there's much more things you can do with it. When it comes to Pangaia, we have this kind of a cool example. So, Pangaia products have so many colors. That's their thing. Every product has, more than 20, it may be even 30 different colors. And what Pangaia is doing, they follow this kind of standard approach of having separate colors as a separate product instead of variants. So each color permutation is a separate product inside the Shopify. And all of those are combined on a single PDP, and it feels for the user as a single product. So now you have to combine those products, or give the merchant option to combine them. And this is pretty standard approach in Shopify. People are doing this for years, and Shopify noticed that and actually prepared an app for it. It's called Combined Listings, and it's doing its job. It's pretty good app, but it has its own limitation. For one, you have to do it manually, and for two, it has limitation of around 20 products, if I remember correctly. So less than Pangaia needs. So what we've done in this case, we used Shopify Flow. We react for when product is created or updated. We run Shopify Flow that runs some code that actually looks for a different product in the same naming convention and connect those through the meta object. So it's creating a new meta object that holds those connections between the products that later on can be used on the front end. And that's done with just Shopify Flow and just meta objects in a very automated way. So for one, there is no longer for one, we just were able to do it, and that wouldn't be possible with combined listing app. So for one, we just could do it. And for two, it's just simpler because it's follow convention. It's done in an automated way. So this is, I guess this is like a quality of life change there with the Flow.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the great ways that a lot of e-com technology providers have evolved in the last few years is flow-based stuff is not new, but the scale at which it can enable businesses to handle automations. I mean, I've used it. I don't use it in nearly as sophisticated way as you guys do, but I've used it with clients for doing simple things. I wanting to auto tag customers with an account enabled flag when they create an account versus when they've done a guest order, for example, so that can be passed through to CRM so that people can understand and model people who are account holders versus those who aren't, and look at how they then onboard people to register accounts through incentives. So there's all these simple things you can do, as well as the more complex stuff that Michael and his team does, which is way beyond my technical understanding. But the other question related to that, which is an interesting one, is because you said that so they've got the men and women's. So you'll have like a black hoodie, and it will be the same item with different sizes that the men and women shop across, and therefore the product the men's and the women's size version of the size has the same SKU, which obviously has a stock challenge. So I'd love to hear how you've handled that. So they're pulling from a single stock file, but they're essentially two different products in Shopify, handling that so that you don't end up in that horrible stock issue.
Yeah. So essentially they have two different products in Shopify that is actually one product. So we can call those displays. So we have one product, but we want to display in a different manner. We want to have a different photos in terms for men and women. So, and I guess this concept is borrowed. The concept of display, I was first aware about it from Centra. So, there are two separate products, but they're single SKU, and they have two different inventory levels. So whenever you buy a men version of the product, what should happen, the stock level of the woman version should also go down. So those have to be synchronized. And at some point, of course, there is an ERP there. So the order goes into the ERP. The ERP comes back with the updated inventory levels. And that's a very common scenario. It happens over time. It can take, half an hour. It can take 1 hour. That's just too long. In this time, the stock could be bought out, and that leads to a very poor user experience. So for that, we also used Shopify Flow. Whenever one inventory level changes, we looking for this different version of a product in a similar fashion to the previous example, okay? And then we update the inventory level of this product that we found. So we're synchronizing those inventory level in between. And I guess it's achieved in a quite cool way, because Pangaia site is an online store 2.0. So it's a liquid-based site. But we found a way to actually utilize hydrogen for this project, and in this exact case. So Shopify Flow also has its own limits. You can do a lot, but you cannot do everything. And in this case, you don't have this kind of a ready-made solution for it. So once again, we need an API, we need a server to do custom things. And historically, we would have to create this custom server outside of the Shopify, host it somewhere else. Once again, it adds complexity, it adds costs. But with hydrogen can also serve as a server, as an API layer. So basically, we've spinned up very lightweight hydrogen project next to this online store 2.0. We're using Flow. We're calling up the hydrogen. Hydrogen is doing all of this custom stuff. And there we have it, basically. So we've built very custom integration, very custom solution without going outside of the Shopify. Like, everything is baked in. It's very easy to reason about. The architecture is not scattered, and we are not adding additional cost there.
Yeah, I really like that example, and I guess the use cases for Flow are like, they're exponential though, because it keeps adding data points that you can connect to. So I'm really intrigued to see where this goes. Another part of the project I think is interesting is the choice of like specialist third-party tools that you've built into the stack that aren't Shopify's. So Klaviyo is one product discovery engine. A lot of people will know it. And with Klaviyo, a lot of people typically go down the route of doing the standard JavaScript implementation. And that's not saying that's a bad thing at all, because it works very, very well. But obviously JS can have an impact in terms of like page speeds. You went for the API integration method. I'd love you to talk us through why that approach and what were the benefits to you and Pangaia of going down the API route.
Yeah. So essentially there are two reasons. And whenever we had an option, whenever we see that the integration have a, like a mature API, mature customs, allow for, for building custom solutions in a mature way, it means that it's easy. It's easy to reason about. We are actually thinking if that's a good route. The reason for it is because those out of the box integration, as you mentioned, they are working very good. In terms of Klaviyo, it's I would say it's making wonders actually. But like with every general solution, they have to account for many different cases, and they have to think in a general way. And essentially that means that they have to load much more code than most likely you need for your single case. And that will always impact the site performance. So loading a lot of JS code will impact your performance. And that's the very first step that you have to do when you optimize performance, is to minimize the impact of this client JavaScript code. So whenever we have a chance to actually do it in a custom way, and build custom, we already have those, components that, and it's more about how the data is provided to this view. Whenever we have chance to do that and it doesn't drive the cost very much, we try to follow this road. So that's what we've done in here. We saved a bit of performance there. Another reason for it was that in the Pangaia case, they have this kind of unique, I would say, maybe unique or interesting approach to how they do certain sections, how they do recommendations and such. Sometimes they want to show manual results. Sometimes they want to show a Klaviyo results and maybe Shopify driven results. So they have essentially those three ways of showing different recommendations or different results. If we would go with this custom with out of the box solution, essentially that would mean that they have to have three different sections and they have to know when to use one. Now they could have just one of it tailored for them, and they just choose if they want to use a Klaviyo or a custom solutions, and that's just creating like a tailored editorial experience for them, and it's so essential part of the site that optimizing this low level operations flow was a game changer.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. And another question that comes up a lot in some of the Shopify projects that I work on at the moment is classic versus new accounts. Obviously, new accounts is where Shopify is headed. There are some key differences. I know with new customer accounts, it's using the one-time password. Classic used to have the ability to do like standard email login. And one of my clients who got an older demographic, they went for Classic because of that, because the one-time password they thought would actually put their audience off. But there are certain things that aren't as compatible with Classic as they are new. So you get all these nuances of technical choices. And you move with on this project with Pangaia, you move from Classic to new. What was the business driver for that? And what was the advantage of new to Pangaia?
Yeah. So the whole idea for this project, and like the main, notion or the main idea that we follow throughout the whole development was to simplify and to get closer to native Shopify. So that was our entry point to this discussion, this decision. So, I totally agree with your case about the new custom accounts. They are not obvious. There are a couple of cases where it doesn't make sense, especially that account extension is not yet there. So either you take it as is, or you don't. So it's kind of this transition phase we're facing right now. So definitely not obvious choice, but for looking at the problem from a simplification point of view, this takes out so much complexity out from the project that it's very much worth to consider it, even if it's at this point it's very basic. But the account in general is this part of application that I like very much, that Shopify decided to build their own solution, or out of the box solution for it, for one. And I always like to compare it more to checkout. So you have to worry about the security. That's always one thing. Another thing, that account is this is this part of application that people like to be standard. Like you want to change your address, you want to change your profile, maybe look at your order, maybe spin up the return process and so on. So like this is very sometimes there may be more to it, like loyalties, maybe some custom flows, maybe you would like to do more in terms of self-management. But in a nutshell, people doing the same stuff on the account and they expect it to just work. It's more pragmatic approach to this part. So that's taking it's taking out a lot of complexity out of the project. It's doing its job very, very well. In terms of Pangaia, as I mentioned, it wasn't an easy decision. We had to make some compromises so there is certain functionalities in terms of loyalties and so on that has to be gated and cannot be added to the account at this point because account extension is not there. So we had to build this custom gated pages next to the account and think how to show that user in an understandable manner. But after our assessment, we get to the conclusion that it's still worth it. And whenever account extensions will be rolled out, we can migrate those gated pages step by step.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is the reason why I love doing these episodes, because I've worked with so many different brands, and you find in each, and there's a commonality in terms of how maybe the project's approached from a core architecture point of view, but the front end build and the way the theme's developed, and whether you go for classic or new, or you use a particular third-party app, changes depending on business needs and effort and time. So I find these conversations fascinating. I could ask you like hundreds more questions, but I won't. I appreciate you have a business to run as well. So Michael, really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us today. If anyone wants to reach out to Michael and probe him on any more of these kind of, engineering decisions, you can contact him through LinkedIn. There's also a link on our landing page on the website. Also, if you want to, if you've got a potential re-architecture needed on Shopify, you're considering these sort of complex decisions, he's always happy to share advice and chat to you. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
And thanks everyone for listening. Hope you found it useful. Do shout out with any questions and keep your ears peeled for next week's episode. You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.